The project evaluation. The evaluation is the systematic and objective assessment of an ongoing or completed project, its design, implementation, and results. This is a definition from the United Nations Evaluation Handbook and will help us in defining some of the concepts that we have during the project evaluation at the closing phase. The goal of an evaluation is to determine the relevance, the fulfillment of the objectives, the efficiency, effectiveness, impact, and sustainability. Those are the main concerns of an evaluation, and we look those in more detail. So in the project evaluation, what we're doing is basically, is the project doing the right things? The rationale, that means the logic of the project. Whether or not the beneficiaries are satisfied, is the project meeting their needs? It's also looking at doing it right. Issues about effectiveness and efficiency are part of the evaluation report. And also, it's important that the evaluation will help identify better ways of doing it, meaning there may be alternatives, some good practices, and again, lessons learned. Why we need an evaluation? At the end of the project, it's very important that we also highlight any unexpected results. That means that after the project has done and delivered some activities, some of the results may come unexpected. They were not part of the plan or part of the design, and it's important to highlight them to see how those results will impact the project in the long term, on the sustainability phase after the project is closed. We also need information for the decision making. Stakeholders, donors, management, they use the evaluation to make changes or recommendations to the project or future projects. And also, any problems or unmet needs are identified during that process. During an evaluation, the evaluator is going to be surveying a lot of the beneficiaries and trying to get a lot of that information. And some of that will be a process of exploring, and maybe out of that will identify some new needs that maybe may not be able to be addressed with the current project, but will be important for any future projects. We also need to identify issues with sustainability. That's an important element in the project at the closing phase to see whether or not the actions and the elements and the outputs that were produced by the project are generating the elements of sustainability so that they don't need the project anymore. We also look at elements of efficiency and effectiveness and relevance of how the project actions are actually helping solve the problem that it started with. It's also looking at recommendations to improve performance and lessons learned for future activities. This is mostly important for the organization and any future projects, especially for projects that are going to be funded by the same donor. Some of those recommendations are going to be quite valuable at the moment the project or the organization begins to design a new project. Here's some of the steps in the evaluation process. The first one is to develop the terms of reference that will contain all the information needed to guide the evaluation. The process to identify the evaluators based on the experience. The process of selecting an evaluator, that is a contract process. Then the work of the evaluator, conducting the evaluation. After that, there will be a review of the draft report, and that is important because the review gives the project manager an opportunity to look at some of the recommendations and maybe provide some clarification before the final report is submitted. Then when we have the final report, we need to distribute that to the key stakeholders who are going to need it or take actions based on that information, and then do some follow-up actions. Follow-up actions means that there are going to be some recommendations that are needed on the project as it's closing, or recommendations that the organization needs to take into account, and so there has to be a follow-up action plan. The terms of reference, it's a document that is prepared that procurement unit will help in the management of the process to find and select the best evaluator or evaluator team that can take on that job. Their first element is to describe in detail the scope of the evaluation, describe all the data that's available from the organization that the project was able to capture that will be made available to the evaluator. Also, a description of what type of methodology is required for the evaluation. The resources that are needed, that's another element that will be available for the evaluator, or the resources that are required to conduct the evaluation. We also request the timeline of when we want the evaluation. We also request the budget, how much will that cost when the evaluators are submitting their proposals, and also identify who's the audience of this report. When we look at the content of the project evaluation report, once the evaluator has completed all the work, most of the time they will follow this structure. These will be the key elements that you will need to find in an evaluation report. There will be a section on introduction where there will be some background and context and the evaluation methodology that was used. Most of the report will be on the evaluation findings. It will concentrate on areas on the design, that is the logical framework and how the logic of that was actually useful or actually was delivered into the project, the relevance of all the work that was done, the efficiency in how the project was able to meet and use the resources to achieve those goals, any evaluations on the partnerships and how they were useful on the project, the effectiveness of the activities of the project, the impact, how the goal is achieved or how the project is contributing to the goal of the project. And then there's going to be a section on sustainability. Finally, the two last sections will be conclusions and recommendations. Once we have that report, it's important then to identify all the users of the evaluation report, the dissemination of the evaluation report, and evaluation follow-up plan. This one is interesting because most of the time we get the evaluation report, we distribute it to the various stakeholders, internal and external, but especially the internal stakeholders, our own organization doesn't do much to follow up on that. So it will be part of the discussions that the project manager during the closing phase will have with the donor and the organization's management team in terms of what is going to be the follow-up plan to implement and to act on the recommendations and the evaluation, because many times they're going to have an impact on the way the organization designs and implements or plans projects. So all those lessons that are being captured by the evaluation, they need to be reflected in future projects.